Everyone, welcome back. We're going to dive into HIPAA compliance, what that means, and the exact laws that you need to follow to be HIPAA compliant, and what that means for confidentiality in your practice. I'm going to focus on HIPAA because HIPAA is a law that primarily supports or protects people who would be going to a clinic to work with the tech, or if a tech was going to a home to work with them. So if you do work in a school, the law is FERPA, not HIPAA, but it's very similar. So you should get a little bit additional training about HIPAA if you're going to work in a school. Lots of techs work in schools, but most techs actually work either in a clinic or a home base, giving home-based therapy. Okay, so what is HIPAA? It's the privacy and security of health information. It sets the rules for use, storage, and sharing client data. It applies to all health partners, including ABA practitioners. Why does it matter? You interact with protected health information, a term you need to be familiar with daily. You need to maintain that confidentiality. It is a legal requirement as well as a professional expectation, and violations do lead to fines, termination, or the loss of certification. So that's why it's super important for you as a tech to understand these laws. Any identifiable information related to health care, including the client name, address, diagnosis, session notes, data, billing records, and communication about services, would be protected. The privacy part limits who can access it. And then there's a security rule, which provides safeguards for electronic records. You must keep all this information private and secure and on a need-to-know basis. HIPAA matters to you because you're going to interact with this protected health information on a daily basis. You need to maintain that confidentiality. Protected health information. Violations can lead to fines, termination, loss of certification, and damage to the client trust. So fines range between $100,000 to $50,000 per violation. It's kind of like that will change state by state, but it does go up to $50,000 and can have serious consequences. HIPAA is crucial for protecting client privacy and trust. Behavior techs have a responsibility to safeguard this really important and sensitive information for your learners, for the people you work with, for the families. So what is protected health information? So it is any identifiable information related to healthcare. And typically this will include the name, the address, the birthday, any kind of ID numbers that your agency or others might use, diagnosis, session notes, billing records, progress reports, and treatment plans. And any information that can identify a client and relates to their care. Even without a name, the information is considered private, and it applies to physical and electronic records. HIPAA regulates the use, storage, and sharing of protected health information. So the electronic records are really important. We'll talk about how you need to store and protect those electronic records. Protected health information includes all identifying information, client name, address, birthday, any ID numbers, and even without a name, the context can identify the client. So if you have someone with a more rare diagnosis and you state on a Facebook group, like, oh, I have someone with Fragile X syndrome or Williams syndrome. Williams is pretty rare. And this is what I'm seeing. Like, what would you recommend next steps are? If I live in your community, like for instance, I lived in a small suburb town. It was small, but still on the beach, suburb. And there were 2 people that I knew with Williams syndrome, which was really odd for one community to have 2. I know who they are. A lot of the community knew them and knew their diagnosis because their parents took them out a lot and did talk about it. Even if the parents are talking about the diagnosis and the community knows them, that information, it's still protected, but that's not the information we're worried about. We're worried that anything else you say in that post. Like, this is the behavior they're dealing with. This is what I'm doing about it. Like, they're clearly receiving VA therapy from your agency. That's the information which is protected. It's the family's right to have that information protected. Some families are super open about everything and kind of talk about it and communicate about it. It doesn't give you a right to be that way just because they are. So it doesn't, just because they're open doesn't mean you can be open about their information. You still protect their information the same way you would with a family who's super closed about it and doesn't want anyone to know. It's the person's right to share. So if the holder of educational medical rights wants to share information about their child, then they have a right to do that. And same with the learner, they have a right to share about themselves. But you do not have that right. So you have to keep that in mind. So what HIPAA requires? One, so it's broken down by privacy and security. Privacy limits who can access the PHI and under what conditions, and the security is the safeguards for any kind of electronic PHI. And that's also like data sheets that are paper fall under that as well. Everybody's using the term electronic, and most things are moving that way. There are still people taking data on pieces of paper. I'm one of them. So that all falls under that security rule as well. And so the privacy rule is really a need to know basis. It's minimal access, the most minimal access that will not hurt their treatment. If you need to give information to someone to improve their treatment, you can within your agencies. Do you need to give information to your supervisor? Yes, absolutely. That will really affect their treatment if they don't have the information. Do you need to share the information with the other tech working with the learner? Yes, of course. That will severely limit their treatment if you do not share. But do you need to share to the front desk person who's, takes calls and deals with some of the insurance billing, but not specifically your client's insurance billing? No, you don't need to share to her. She will not make the treatment better if she has that information. And then for security, we use approved apps, devices, and methods that will protect PHI. So it has to be HIPAA compliant, whatever you're using. This is important for texting and emailing as well. Your company should provide more training as well as a system. If they're going to ask you to communicate with the families electronically in some way, they'll provide a HIPAA compliant system, right? So you have to think about that and use that. If you don't have a HIPAA compliance system, typically what will happen is you'll use initials for everything. So there's no way for anyone to know who you're talking about. However, I think that's done less and less, which is good because it's not the most secure. So it would be better to just be in a HIPAA compliant environment if you're texting families or communicating. A lot of times they'll buy a whole system. Like Brightwheel is HIPAA compliant, and Brightwheel, a lot of preschools use it to communicate to their families, but you can use it to communicate for therapy purposes too. And then you also use initials for 2 levels of protection. The minimum necessary rule, so access only the minimum amount of PHI needed. Minimal amount of people should know, but also minimal amount of information. You are only allowed to access or discuss the minimal amount of information needed to do your job. So avoid accessing client data out of curiosity. So, for an example, you have a learner and they've had a bunch of surgeries. These surgeries were in the past. They are not immediately affecting your therapy in this moment. Should you look at what those surgeries were and what the client went through? No. You shouldn't. Whatever you need to do your job effectively is what you should have access to and nothing else. Limit discussions to authorized personnel. Only discuss client information with supervisors, parents, or other staffs who are authorized to access the PHI, and the general rule is the team supporting that client is authorized, and you shouldn't access anybody outside of that team. Ensure confidential conversations happen in private away from other people. So if you're going to talk about a client, you go into a closed room where you can close the door and no one can hear you. You don't do it in the break room. You don't do it out in the front with the front desk staff and maybe some other clients around. HIPAA in everyday work. Use secure apps or portals for data collection. Keep paperwork in locked folders or bags. Avoid using personal phones or emails to store or share client information. Conduct confidential conversations in private locations away from other clients and staff or general public. Avoid discussing cases in public places like parking lots, hallways, stores. I've been very careful now, but definitely in the past, you're picking up your kid or you're shopping and you take a call. If there's private information, you want to make sure you leave wherever you're at and go somewhere private. Only access or discuss the minimal amount of client information needed to perform your job duties. Do not read or share other information like out of curiosity. Avoid the social media pitfalls. So do not post stories, progress updates, photos, or any information that could identify your client, even if you think the post is anonymous. Make sure you're careful. You need to report breaches immediately, such as emailing the wrong parent or losing client data. You do need to report that to your supervisor. Complete an incident report and let everyone know what happened. And then also tell the person you received the wrong information, like to keep that confidential on their side. Early reporting can limit the consequences. So I think like emailing the wrong parents is a very common thing. Totally, like you're not trying to hurt anyone clearly. So like you're not going to lose a certification over there. There's steps we can take to rectify that and just be more careful later on. I had a friend who kept the school files in her car and her car was robbed. They stole all the school files. Nothing came out of it. They just took everything in the car, thinking it might be valuable. I'm sure they probably ended up in the trash, but there was a lot of reporting that had to be done when that happened. Confidential conversations. So you want to make sure that when you're having these confidential conversations, you're ensuring conversations about client information happen in private, away from other clients. Authorized persons, you want to only discuss client information with those who are authorized to receive it. If you're not sure if they're authorized to receive it, you need to check on that. Find out who's the educational and medical rights holder. If this person is considered on your team, like they're part of the team and they need to know. And if you're unsure, you talk to your supervisor about that. And then also like look for eavesdroppers. I don't think a lot of people would do this intentionally, but just by accident. I was in the airport. I don't really have clients anymore, so I didn't break any confidentiality, but there was someone right behind me having this conversation about her job, which I listened to because it involved cleaning up crime scenes. I wasn't really sure, but it might be very interesting to someone. And what she was saying was not confidential. And with the information, I have no intention of doing anything. It was just curiosity. But that could happen. Someone could be like, oh, I was thinking about getting ABA therapy and like listening to what you're saying about the therapy or something like that. So you just want to be mindful of that. Social media and HIPAA. Avoid posting stories and progresses or funny things a client said. That's a good one. Funny things a client said. I've seen a lot of people post that. Don't do that. I know you'll have learners who are so cute, so fun to work with, all those things. And they say really funny things. All kids do. But sometimes kids who have to interact with therapists more, they get reinforced for being engaging to the therapist. So they start being more and more engaging to adults, which is good. I think it's a good thing overall, but they're going to say cute, funny things all the time. And so you can't post that even though it's adorable. Do not post photos of clients in their environments. I would be really careful of that. And then refrain for posting anything that could hint at the client's identity, location, or behavior plan. So I really think the biggest problem with that, people just posting on their wall or in their account about their job. It's hard. Like you're happy about your job. Maybe you're doing really well. I understand why you want to celebrate that. You just have to be so careful. But I also see these clinical questions in groups and stuff, which is not good. I would never do it, but so many times I see it and I'm like, there's enough information I can figure out exactly who this is. You have no idea who's in the group. The parent could be in the group for all you know. In the bigger groups, the parent could see the post and then like they know their child's confidentiality was violated and you could get in trouble. That's another way that that could happen. Use agency approved systems. So make sure that your HIPAA compliant system, that's the best way to communicate. Avoid personal devices. So really you should have your own work device for all techs, but it really would be best practice. And the work device should have like specific security. Like I've never, in schools, for example, I didn't have a phone for work, but I had a computer. And like I would never pull up an IEP on my personal computer because it's not as secure as that work computer. And then WhatsApp is not HIPAA compliant. I heard so many people have asked me, is WhatsApp HIPAA compliant? No. WhatsApp is very unsafe for many reasons. I mean, not if you're talking to your friends or scheduling your own appointments, it's fine. It's a good app, but it is not HIPAA compliant. Everybody, I heard like 3 techs have told me recently, oh, we use WhatsApp, so it's fine because there's an anonymous element to WhatsApp that's not HIPAA compliant. Ensure your devices have strong passwords and lock features. Think if someone stole this, what would this look like? Make sure it's locked down in a way that if someone stole it, they'll have to erase the whole thing to do whatever they're planning to do with it. So they couldn't go through your files before they wiped it. All your data collection and session notes must be accurate, timely, recorded right after the session, and secure. So paper notes locked up, digital notes, password protected. Never leave data on desks, tables, shared drives, or email drafts. So make sure that's a good one. It's drafts. In schools, I had to get, like, I put my computer where it locked within a few seconds because I always had drafts open because we're writing so many reports. So you got to lock your computer quick if you're going to have drafts open. Make sure like leaving files different places on a table, even like you have the file, you put it on the table and you go and get coffee. Don't just take it. Just always hold it with you if you're walking around with a file, going to your office to review or whatnot. But you need to get a snack or go to the bathroom. Like I've taken files into the bathroom. You just have to. Ensure electronic devices have strong passwords and auto lock features. So we do report HIPAA violations. You're going to notify your supervisor immediately. It will sort of depend on what it is. You'll complete an incident report, and so then you notify families. Typically, at that point, if it's not a huge one, once you notify families and get training, it's probably over, and you can move on. Now, the family can choose to report that against your license or funding sources, but most of the time that doesn't happen. Besides sending the wrong parent information probably twice in my whole career, I've been involved with techs having a lot of HIPAA violations where I have to help them through it and make sure we tell the right people and all. And I've actually never had someone like say anything against someone's license. Most of these are small. As long as you act appropriately, it's going to be okay. A lot of times they're pretty harmless, just something that can't keep happening. Be honest in reporting. If it does go higher, be honest and transparent and understand the incident reporting process. Make sure who you need to report to. So your responsibilities is to understand what it is and how to protect it. What is protective health information? All the identifying information related to healthcare. You need to store and share client information in a secure manner, making sure all your devices are locked down right, using a work device if possible, using HIPAA compliant technology. Use the minimum necessary rules, minimum information, minimum people knowing. Report your breaches right away to your supervisor. Get through that process. It's hard to do. Most of the time, if you approach it honestly and it was a real mistake, most families will forgive you and you will be able to move on and learn from it. Always ask when in doubt. If you're unsure, consult your supervisor. Refer to your agency's privacy policies. These are the resources you might need. You should get more HIPAA training. So most of the time there's a HIPAA course tied to work, like getting a job. Also FERPA for schools, there's a full course for that. So you want to make sure one, review your ethics code so you're clear on it. It's in there. And then HHS has a lot of information about it. And then you'll have agency specific documentation or policy. And there's reference guides out there if you find any of this confusing or need more help with this or need reminders, get a reference guide so you can always follow it. Okay, thank you.